Yo, 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 you just finished Julius Caesar. Great job. All right, guys, we're going to check your packet for Act 5. What a story, first of all. Insane, right? Insane. Okay, so let's start at the top here. Remember, right here, doesn't really matter what you have written down. You guys did that in your groups. Cool. Vocab first. Let's take a look at that. So the first word is flatterers. I said charmers, people who are trying to charm you, flatter you, that kind of thing. Okay. Next one, we have vile. That means nasty. Okay, next one is mourn. That means like to cry, to have grief over, that kind of thing. Then we have grief right after that. I said heartache. You could say mourn. You could switch those, whatever. And then virtue means kind of merit, honorable, good person, all of that good stuff. Cool. All right, so that's the vocab. So now let's get to the juicy juice right here, right? Okay, everything that happened in Act 5. Here we go. All right, so Act 5, Scene 1. Here, this takes place on the battlefield. Actually, every part does, where it's at the end of the play, it's all on the battlefield. So things are heating up since Act 4, right? So we know that there were some alliances made, some friendships broken, some people died. It was crazy. So here we go in Act 5, Scene 1. Octavius and Antony are preparing for battle. So we know that they are still working together, trying to defeat the other side. And Brutus and Cassius talk to Octavius and Antony here. There's a lot of back and forth. The reason that is, guys, is think about as a play, it'd be much harder to visualize or see this unless it was like a movie or something like it on the stage. We have to kind of make that world happen around them. There's not CGI or fun backgrounds or that kind of stuff, so that's why. And then here, Octavius challenges Brutus and Antony to battle. So this is where, again, things are starting to kind of get real between the two sides. I don't have a good feeling about how it's going to end. Okay? Then Act 5, Scene 2, all right? So this is where a lot of kind of small things happen, and then Brutus tells Messala to ride and tell Cassius to give a surprise attack. So Brutus is trying to use his best war tactics, and I'm not sure it's going to work out again in his favor. So he is trying to communicate with Cassius through someone else. It doesn't feel good. I'm not sure about this one. Okay, and then we have Act 5, Scene 3. So again on the battlefield. This one's a little bit longer, right? Here we have a couple of key things happen. So Brutus gives order to attack too soon, and now Cassius and his men are surrounded. So again, they're not communicating, they're far apart from each other, and Brutus makes a really bad call, basically. And now Cassius is in a terrible position. So Cassius, then, this gets chaotic quickly. He mistakes Titanus is dead, and he ends up getting stabbed because of it by Pindarus. So I know that's kind of a complicated scene, but basically what happens is just Cassius, again, mistakes someone for not being the right person, and then he gets stabbed kind of in the meantime, okay? Titanus is not dead, right? He figures this out, and he is overcome with grief. He's like, I can't believe that I'm responsible for this. This war is crazy. I don't know what to do. And he actually stabs himself with Cassius' sword. So not the happy bedtime story like we talked about. Pretty intense there, okay? And then Brutus talks about Caesar's ghost that visited them, remember, back in the last act, and he's like, oh, this is because of Caesar's ghost. Like, everyone is dying because of that. Caesar told us things would happen on the battlefield. Okay, lots of kind of complicated things there, guys. Make sure you have these key things, please, just because there's a lot in that scene. So this is what you need, okay? And then Act 5, Scene 4, still on the battlefield. Lucilius, so this is a weird kind of side plot too, pretends to be Brutus. This is trying to trick the other side. In the meantime, because of that, a guy named Cato is killed, and that just kind of, again, shows the chaos and the violence that's going on. And Antony, who they're trying to trick, figures this out, but he doesn't let on that he knows, and instead he sends men to see if Brutus is alive or dead. So he's kind of like, oh yeah, sure, and like talking to him like, how are you, Brutus? But secretly sends men elsewhere, and we're going to see why that's important here in a second. Okay, so again, that one is kind of complicated. Please make sure you have these things written down, just because it's a lot. All right, and then finally, Act 5, Scene 5, the end of this glorious, glorious play we've been reading, takes place on the battlefield, okay? So Brutus is really upset. There's just a lot weighing on him. We know from his wife dying to now Cassius to all of the things that he regrets with Caesar. Like, there's just a lot going on, and he wants to take his own life. And so he's asking different people, like, will you help me with this? Will you hurt me? That kind of stuff. And they all say, no, Brutus, like, we won't do that to you, right? You're noble, you're good, no. And so the way that it happens, and it's really kind of a debatable topic, we'll talk in class a little bit more about is it honorable or not. He runs into his sword. So he has somebody hold his sword straight out for him, and he just runs straight into it. I know some of you are probably giggling at that, but it is a really intense, important literary moment that we'll talk about later. It shows honor, and so we'll talk about that, okay? And then at the very end, Antony Octavius, they actually end up honoring Brutus, even though they were enemies this entire time. But they call him the noblest Roman to all of them, or that they ever had, right? And so another big talking point here, and I'm sure we've discussed it, if not we will, in class about Brutus's death, but just intense there, okay? So make sure you have those things. This one is a little bit of an easier scene, but make sure you have those things down, okay? And that's it. That's the end. That's the end of Julius Caesar, okay? So let's go on to theme, and again, yours can be very different from mine. There's a lot in here. So the first one I did was sadness. Really, Act 5, I feel like everyone was dying. Like every time I turned around, it was just ridiculous. And so one of the quotes that I found was "Goodbye to you, the last of all the Romans," and that's on page 225. And this is just a reflection of how Rome will never be the same after Caesar's death, right? And so for me, that was a really dark blue, almost gray color, because things are never going to be the same, right? And then finally, my last theme I said was nobility, okay? And that one has to do with Brutus. And at the very end, it says he was the noblest Roman of them all, right? And so that one is just kind of an intense statement by his enemies. They're the ones saying that. And it says Brutus proved his nobility in his death because he died for the betterment of his country. So we'll talk again about that death, why he did it, whatever. But in my mind, nobility is a really strong theme in that, and you can argue that for other characters too. For me, nobility is kind of this like gold color, maybe almost like a deep yellow, but more gold. And so that's what I said for that, okay? Last but not least, congratulations, you finished the play. Down here, this is not something I can help you with or fill out for you because in your groups, you guys have been working on this, but it'll say, you see that it says, now that you have finished, it should say, think back to the whole story. What themes might show up in the beginning, middle, and end of the play in different ways? List your top 2 below. So let's say we have to do a piece of writing on this play. Maybe after Thanksgiving. This was going to help you guys get started on that piece of writing, should it happen. So down here, guys, as a group, I want you to go through and really pick what are the top 2 that you know you can defend, okay? It could be things that you've already seen. It could be things that you are talking about now. But I can't fill that out for you because I don't know what your top 2 are, but you do need to have that done, okay? So again, pause this video as you need to. Go back. Make sure you really have those events in this part right here, guys, because they will show up on perhaps a test. And then go ahead and move on to that theme part with your group. All right, peace out.